Good afternoon, good morning if you're joining us from different parts of the world. Good evening, perhaps. Welcome to the Biotech Forecast. We're really pleased to have you. Feel free to put cameras on. There's no obligation to, but it's always nice to see people's faces. And thank you for joining us. We will keep. Hello, Michael. We will keep vamping a little bit till we get more people in, and I'll start to share my my screen. So, welcome to today's session. Welcome to the Biotech Forecast. It'll be no surprise for me to say that we are obviously in choppy waters right now. Although I must say there are starting to be some indications of some positive trends. It's very limited, and you know there's a lot of sort of challenging situations still going on as well. But it's interesting, at the start of this year, very first week of January, so just before JPM, I spoke with the CEO of one of the major VC funds, life science VC funds in the UK. And I asked him, I figured he would probably know what the market's going to be like, if anyone would. And I asked him what he expected for the year. And he described it in a way that I really liked and that I've yet to see topped. He said that he was expecting a long, slow walk out of the bear market. And I think that reasonably describes what we're seeing. I'm going to go into a bunch of different detail as we go through this session, but yes, there are continued restructurings and redundancies and challenges with fundraising and, you know, all sorts of political and economic issues and challenges to the sector. But we are seeing some positivity as well. And while, you know, the first part of the year we were seeing all negative news, there is starting to be some green shoots pushing through. So I'll talk about that a little bit. Because of the work we do at Singular in search and talent, and for those of you who aren't familiar, I'll touch on that a little bit in just a second. We often are the first to see where things are heading, and we pay very close attention to those signs. But as well as that, the team here have spoken with more than 30 of the industry's top leaders over the last couple of weeks, from people running startups to senior executives in big pharma companies. I think some of them are here today. I recognize some of the names on the call. So if you did contribute to the research for this session, thank you very much for joining us. We wanted to bring as up-to-date a set of insights to you as possible. So these sessions, these research interviews were happening up until yesterday afternoon. So if I'm looking in different places at my notes, that's why, is that, you know, we've got things written down in notebooks and on bits of notes sections and things like that. But, you know, we're basing the things we're going to share with you today on those interviews as well as on data that we're seeing from elsewhere. So what I want to do today is I'm going to talk to you about some things that probably you're already aware of. I'm going to talk to you about some things that you may not be aware of. And what I really want to do is try and join those dots for you and try and give you some, I hesitate to use the word predictions, try and give you some sense of the things that you can be doing to position yourself and your companies for the second half of this year. I'm not going to tell you that everything's going to be fine. It is still going to be a challenge, but there are some things that you can do that we're seeing work in the market that I think will be very useful. So some of you I know already. For those of you who I don't, my name is Tom Froggatt. I'm the CEO and founder of Singular. Singular is a search, talent, and leadership development company focused entirely on the biotech sector. We only work with biotech companies. And we work very, very closely through that work with founders, boards, executive teams, investors across the UK, Europe, and the US. And there are two sets of trends that we've been seeing. We've seen people falling into two camps as they try and look forward to the rest of next year. Some are trying to wait out the market. Some are trying to wait for things to get better and sit on their hands, sit tight, cut costs until things improve. 2021 isn't coming back, and it's been 3 years now. We've seen a lot of casualties along the way. And I think waiting out the market is a strategy that leaves you out of control. The other camp of leaders, and I started to see this at the beginning of this year. I remember being at an event in Boston where it was in the lobby of Alnylam, and there was a series of people speaking there. It was a 10th anniversary party for the Timmerman Report, the newsletter. And I started to hear this sentiment there, and I've heard it more and more over the last few months. This other camp is people who are rethinking the biotech business model. I'm going to talk about this a bit more, but this is the way to go. I think, those who are looking at different ways of bringing the incredible science that they're researching, the incredible products they're developing to the patients that need it, those are the people who are finding ways through this challenging time. And, the fundamentals are still excellent in the biotech sector. The science has never been more exciting. People still need the things that you are working on, the research that you're developing, the drugs, diagnostics, whatever it is that you're working on. But we need to build companies that bring that research to life. And that is the real challenge that we're facing right now. That has many, many symptoms. And I'm going to talk about some of those as we go through this session. So I'm going to start by looking at what's changing. We're going to talk about what's changing in terms of funding, in terms of technology, in terms of the political landscape and how that's reshaping companies. We'll look at where the industry is going. We'll look at why business models need to adapt and what companies that win the future will start to do differently. And of course, because of what we do, we're going to look very briefly at talent. Now, this will apply to some of you and it may not apply to others, but there are some things that you can be thinking about when it comes to talent that if you're in a position to take advantage of them, will set you up for a very, very strong forward path. So we start by talking about funding. I think most people on this call are aware of this. There is still capital in the market. In fact, there's an argument to say that there's perhaps more capital in the market than there has been for a long time. But deploying it, people are cautious about deploying it. We are seeing, fewer deals, but much larger checks. In Q1 of 2025, for example, 75% of private investment went into deals that we would class as mega rounds, so in excess of $100 million. The median size of venture rounds in that quarter was $93 million. And this has been a trend that's been developing for about the last 18 months, is quarter on quarter, the median size of rounds has been increasing. The companies that are getting funded, we are seeing activity at the seed level, at the very, very early stage, but really the things that are getting funding are the things that have already been de-risked, or those companies that have a track record of execution, like those companies that have a leadership team, particularly with a track record of execution. Investors, if you look at it from an investor's point of view, a lot of things were backed in 2021 and earlier that haven't paid off. And lots of reasons for that. Some of those things perhaps shouldn't have been back to the level that they were. Some of that has been just changes in the market, changes in the way we live because of COVID, changes in priorities. But a lot of investors have been burnt by investing in great ideas, and there are so many great ideas, so much incredible science around. But what every investor I speak to wants to see is execution, track record of execution. If you can show that you've set milestones, hit milestones, and delivered on them, that's going to work much better to get your investment case in place. However, investors are looking much more closely as well at your business model and how far you've thought forward to commercialization or some sort of transaction. I've talked about the fundamentals of the sector, and I fully believe in that. I was listening to a podcast recently, though, and the CEO and CFO of Generate Bio were talking on that podcast. And look, their business has been built around the narrative of changing the biotech business model, so there may be some vested interest in this statement. But they said that over the last, I think it was the last 20 years, biotech investment overall has returned about a 4% return for a huge amount of risk. And that is largely because not the science doesn't work, although that is sometimes the case, but that we're working in a business model that is outdated. It takes us so long to get things approved and to customers, to patients, and power is concentrating into fewer and fewer hands, that we must try and find a better way to bridge the gap between the therapies or diagnostic tools that we're developing and the patients that need them. And look, I don't have the answer as to what that business model is, but thinking about that business model is really crucial. And following the path that's been set out for years and years, it's going to take a collective effort for us to change the model of biotech because of the regulatory requirements, because of the capital requirements, because of the challenges with pricing and reimbursement and all these kinds of things. But there are fundamental shifts in the world that are happening both within the sector and outside of the sector that mean we all actually have to rethink our business models. This isn't just a biotech issue, by the way. This is happening in service companies, technology companies, consulting businesses everywhere around the world. And of course, one of the fundamental changes, one of the biggest impacts on the way that we work today is the influence of artificial intelligence. And it's not just about AI in drug discovery, although there's lots of exciting things happening there. You know, we're starting to see phase 2 data being read out from AI developed drugs. I won't get into the semantics of how AI developed they are and all that kind of thing, but there are this clear potential of the application of AI in drug discovery and drug development. But AI is going to become, if it's not already, it's going to become a fundamental part of how your business operates, or it must become a fundamental part if you're going to compete. Everything from the way you market your business to the way you communicate to the way people get work done to the way they communicate. There's a productivity gap growing between companies that use AI and those that don't, and that gap is getting wider and wider. To give you an example, so this is something that I started exploring last year in my own company. One of the most useful things I've done with AI is I use ChatGPT to create a set of custom GPTs that act as a board of advisors, or almost a non-exec board for me. So we have a CFO, a chief marketing officer, a COO, a chair, and every month I go to those GPTs and I give them my report for the month, and I ask them to give me feedback. I ask them to give me ideas, thoughts, things that I've missed, things I might not be considering, or I ask them about the execution of those things. Now, that board doesn't make any decisions, obviously, and the GPTs don't talk to each other yet. I think that's probably why my job remains safe for now. But using these tools to get greater insight and to get different points of view is really crucial, and how you train them and how you use them is important. But that has made my business better. And that's true of any business that's out there. You can use these tools to make your business better. And one of the biggest impacts of that is that teams are getting smaller, teams are getting faster, teams are going to be smaller and smaller in the future. And I'll talk about that a bit more later on. But it's been the case for a while, but we're certainly seeing this now. You know, you have to consider that the first commercial version of ChatGPT was only released 2.5 years ago, or a little over 2.5 years ago. And when it first came out, it wasn't great. It didn't do a huge amount of stuff. But you look at where that technology is today, and this is the pace of progress that we're seeing. So the impact is only going to increase. Now, what that means for execution is that companies are moving faster. Companies are moving faster with less resource. There is less capital burden on a lot of organizations because, of course, one of the key things that we pay for is people's salaries. Making AI an integral part of how you operate is crucial. So, you know, I'm talking to a lot of our clients at the moment to try and help them figure out how to predict how many people they're actually going to need in future. It's actually a much more complicated question than it used to be. And there's still going to be a need for people. I don't think that this sort of narrative of everybody's going to lose their job is right, although there will be some impact. But I think to be competitive as a company, especially in challenging environments, you have to look at ways that you can use your resources more effectively. And thinking technology first is a crucial way to do that. You know, I was researching recently AI tools for sales development. So AI tools that could do sales development representative work. And there's some really, I don't know how well they work, I haven't tested them yet, but there's tools available for sort of $500 a month, $900 a month that do a huge amount of work that would have previously been manual work for someone else. And so the capability of these tools and the cost of them, the capability is increasing and the cost is decreasing. Some of you might have seen recently that OpenAI actually just significantly reduced the cost of assistant credits by about 80%, and that decrease in cost is likely to continue. But of course, it's not just technology. We're seeing a huge amount of political change, and particularly over the last 6 months, I think it's probably fair to say that the biotech sector has been hit particularly hard by politics and regulatory changes, particularly in the US. I think it's really, really difficult, of course, to see how to get drugs approved. And of course, if you're trying to map your competitive landscape and map your competitive progress, the delays in approvals are going to be a key part of that. But we're seeing on the flip side of that, China picking up speed. They are approving drugs more quickly. They're approving higher quality drugs. They're agreeing significant licensing deals with companies around the world. They're funding more companies. And this is the result of work that's been happening in China over the last 5 or 6 years. And they're becoming a competitive global power in the sector. It's no longer about cheaper resource and manufacturing and things like that. It's some excellent research coming out of the Far East. And Europe is improving as well. I think there's a distance to go in Europe, but there's more capital starting to become available. There's infrastructure being put in place. There are parts of Europe that perhaps weren't serious alternatives to companies that are now becoming those. And I think, we currently as a sector are a very US-centric sector, whether you're in the US or not. But there's an existential crisis in US biotech. This probably hasn't happened before, but since probably the end of World War II, and it's fair to say that the biotech sector probably didn't exist before the end of World War II. There was pharma companies, of course. The US has been the center of the world, but that is potentially not going to be the case anymore. And I think this is a real challenge for those of you who are US focused or who are American yourselves to accept. This is a fundamental shift that's happening. And, just because the US isn't the center of the world doesn't mean that globally there's not a bright future for the industry. However, the global strategy, the regional strategy that you adopt is likely to change. So of course, I'm sure all of you are asking questions about where are you hiring people? Where are you running your trials? Where's the next raise coming from? One of the challenges in the US, of course, as well as regulation and politics, is the cost of doing business there. And there are some incredible people, obviously, in America who have a huge amount of experience, but the cost of doing business elsewhere has started to decrease. And one thing that I think is really important to bear in mind is that your strategy, your regional strategy, will vary. So one of the things that we're seeing in Europe is that investors are still keen to back big platform ideas, longer scientific timelines. They're still keen to look at the potential of a platform. Now, it probably needs to be asset supported because of the proof of concept issues that we've seen with investments that happened at the peak of the market. But platforms are still very much on the agenda in Europe, whereas in the US, we're seeing less appetite. VCs want near-term wins. They want things that have been de-risked. So they're looking for companies that are closer to the clinic or closer to revenue. Again, the size of rounds that happened in Europe over the last 10 years, the gap between that and the size of rounds that happened in America has grown bigger and bigger, and therefore more capital has been put at risk in the US, and perhaps this is driving that risk aversion, is they've just lost so much money on things that didn't work comparatively to Europe. European investors have also lost a lot of money. Some of them have made a lot of money, but the gap has been significant. And then I think in Asia, especially in China, but also we're seeing some interesting things happening in Taiwan and in Korea. There was traditionally a feeling that the Asian companies, the big Japanese companies, for example, were very, very strong in their home region and not as strong elsewhere in the world. That's starting to change. These companies are really focusing on how they take their therapies global and their products global with speed. They're no longer restricting themselves to their region. So depending on where you're operating, that's going to change your business strategy. And, where you're operating no longer needs to be your home market. I think the the digital footprint of companies these days means that they can be headquartered anywhere and operate more or less anywhere else. You know, where you're going to raise money from, where you're going to operate, is going to determine what your strategy is. And don't be too influenced by what happened 5 years ago or what's happening around you if you're going to build your company elsewhere. Yeah, science remains global, of course, but your strategy needs to be localized. So these are some of the key trends that we're seeing. You know, it's important to showcase your business model, not just the science you're working on. It's important to build for and demonstrate execution. Find small milestones in your story and deliver on them. Show investors that you can do that on time. Fundraising will remain difficult. I don't think that's going to change anything, but it's more likely that they will believe for your ability to execute going forward. I saw a panel a few weeks ago. It was a bunch of private equity people, and they weren't specifically talking about biotech, but one of them said something really interesting. He said that we are now in an era where ideas have become the commodity, not the currency. Great ideas used to be the currency. Great ideas used to be the things that powered great businesses. But there are so many great ideas around in biotech and elsewhere that actually the difference now is in the execution. So the idea is no longer enough. You need to show how you operate and how you execute. 2021 is not coming back, not anytime soon anyway. I think even though we are seeing those signs of recovery, they are slow and they're going to continue to be slow. I don't think we'll be in a better place by the end of the year, I think, but it won't be a significantly better place. We'll see slow progress, but we're having to rewrite business models in every industry, and that is going to take time. So I suppose the key piece of advice I would give there is don't pursue a model that used to work. Don't build for a problem that no longer exists. And think very carefully about the problem that you're solving. There's too many companies. This is not a biotech thing specifically. It's happening elsewhere as well. There are too many companies that are technology-led rather than problem-led. Think about the problem that you're solving for your investors, for your patients, and build from there. Don't be precious about your idea, your technology, your research. Of course, you've invested a lot of capital in it, but make sure that capital is solving the right problems. Because we're still seeing good projections for the biotech sector. I think, technologically, we're at such an incredible point that the future can only be bright. But not everyone is going to share in that equally. The sector is still projected to triple over the next 9 years, 10 years. Demand for therapies is growing, particularly as the sort of median age or the sort of population age increases. That will continue to be the case. There's a growing interest in longevity and health as a whole. So I think, there's an element to which health and wellness is rising, and then therefore people are more interested in prevention and prediction. There's pricing challenges around that, of course, and reimbursement challenges around prevention and prediction. How do you calculate the odds that someone would have got diabetes and get paid for that? That's a challenging question. But this has been a question we've been tackling for a long time. There are still lots of unmet medical needs. There's still huge amounts of diseases that we don't have adequate treatments for, or that the treatments that we have are outdated for. Still, we're operating in, even with all the advances in cell and gene therapy, for example, we're operating on a model that targets 2% of our genome. We're starting to see companies focus on the non-coding genome. But all the medical advances we have are really based on 2% of the DNA that we express, and so or the expressed 2% of our DNA. So there's really interesting things happening that are going to tackle some of these issues. And if you think of fundamentals of any sector, is there a problem? Absolutely. Are we growing our capability to solve that problem? Absolutely. We need to find different ways, as we've talked about, to bridge the gap in between. And the model has to shift. Moving fast is crucial, but being lean is also critical in moving fast. And given the technological advances we're seeing, you can do a lot more with a leaner workforce than you've ever been able to do before. So important to build in a way that really mirrors the fact that we're going to see more change over the next 2 to 3 years, that it's going to continue to be a hard market to predict. So staying light on your feet, staying able to pivot is going to be absolutely crucial. So we've talked about this quite a lot, but I'll restate it because I think it's important. It used to be that if the science was good enough, everything else would follow. And great science is still crucial. You cannot build a great biotech company or even a moderately successful biotech company without great science. But it's the price of entry. It's the table stakes. It's no longer enough. It's the businesses that you build around them that are crucial. And we're starting to see this in how investors are assessing businesses. So several major VCs, including Google Ventures, Andreessen Horowitz, Sofinova Partners, those are the ones I'm aware of. There's probably several others, are actually including culture and team assessment, and particularly leadership assessment, in their due diligence formally. And it used to be the case that investors talked a lot about how important the team was. Some of them were more serious about it than others. But now they know there is a huge amount of technical risk in the investments they're making. They know there is a huge amount of political, regulatory, and economic risk. Decreasing their execution risk is the one thing that they have significant control over. So getting funded is about the business that you build around your science, and the business model that you're pursuing around your science. And you should see business models as experiments as well. We don't know what the answer is. None of us know what the answer is. We haven't seen a proven case study of what a new biotech business model looks like. We have to conduct experiments and pivot along the way. What will certainly be the case is that we will have smaller companies. Hopefully, those companies will be better, and they will certainly be faster. AI is, of course, speeding up delivery in every sector. We are seeing, if you take OpenAI as the company, as an example, there's less than 100 people work for OpenAI, and they have a valuation of $324 billion. That's based on lots of factors. But we're seeing companies of 10 people, 20 people do huge, impressive things because they're enabled by technology. Biotech will remain cross-disciplinary, of course. And so you will always need people with different backgrounds because that domain understanding, knowledge and understanding, of course, are very different things. Technologically, LLMs have all the knowledge in the world. Do they have the wisdom that's built around that knowledge? Are they giving people the insight that they need is a different question. Probably too philosophical for us to deal with in this session. But it remains cross-disciplinary, so you're still going to need lots of people to work together. But what needed 20 people before might need 3 now. What needed 250 people might need 30. What needed 10,000 people, you might only need 10% of that. And so companies have to be sharper around the teams that they're creating, and also they have to be more selective or more diligent about how they retain those people, because the value of each individual person is going to be significantly greater. If you've got a smaller team, if you've got a team of 20 people, each person is 5% of your business. If you've got a team of 5, each person is 20% of your business. So the impact of them leaving, disengaging, those sorts of things increases. The quality of those people is going to be even more crucial. The interaction between them is going to be even more crucial. Less fat in the organization means less places to hide. More tools means greater level of expectation. The level of competition that we're seeing is going up and up and up. Some of you will have seen the sort of controversy on LinkedIn recently around certain venture capitalists talking about 996, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, or 7-day-a-week cultures being the way to compete now. Again, we won't get into the sort of politics and argument around whether that's true, but there are people with those expectations now, and that is the level that we're playing at. But observing where we are and observing the fact that people are likely to be the slowest part of the machine to change, biologically, we're still the same as we were a couple of thousand years ago, more or less. The companies that succeed in the future will bring in the right people, but they'll also engage the right people and retain them. And there are 3 things that those companies will do. they will give people a larger mission to contribute to. I think people feel powerless. I think a lot of people feel that they don't have much control. Giving them a sort of a rallying cry, a standard to gather around and do something that they can genuinely influence a positive outcome in is going to be a crucial part of what the best companies do in the future. Things are going to continue to change at an incredible pace. And so we collectively and individually will have to change. And we'll have to continue to develop people. We'll have to continue to educate and grow and advance the skills of our people as the environment we're in changes. The tools that we use will change constantly. So companies will act as the best companies will act as a hub of learning and development. People won't start working and stop learning, especially in biotech. The people who work in this sector are lifelong learners. That is what they do. They don't just build their own knowledge, they build our collective knowledge as the human race. And so continuing to foster that and engage that is going to be absolutely crucial. And the best companies will also connect people, especially people who wouldn't naturally connect with each other. We're in smaller and smaller bubbles. We are operating in deeper and deeper echo chambers. We are seeing more physical isolation and greater digital isolation as well. Although we're connected to people who are very similar to us. Opposing points of view, opposing backgrounds, different experiences of the world are becoming rarer. And so companies, I think, will be the places in which people get that connection. And that's going to be crucial for us not to end up very small-minded, very narrow-minded as we progress into a future that's going to continue to change. By the way, it's not just companies that win the future will be doing this. The best companies are already doing these things. So biotech continues to grow. The old models are giving way to smaller, faster, better companies. You need less people to do what you needed more people to do before. Great science needs great companies built around it. We are absolutely deep in winter, but spring will come. We see this across the world and we see this in this sector. Every sector and every society goes through cycles. The cycles of history repeat themselves over and over again. And we have to go into deep winter, deep crisis to feel enough disruption, to feel enough pain to find the new way of working that will build the future. And that's where we are right now. We're in the depths of it. We're scrambling around in the dark, trying to find what's going to work. But we will find a way to move into the spring. So we have to keep looking for that path forward. And I strongly believe that the next generation of biotech leaders, the companies that lead the future of biotech, will be built around a clear mission, culture of growth and development, and strong connection and trust. Moving on to talent very quickly, because this is what we do. If you are in it, not all of you will be, but if you are in a position to take advantage of the talent that's in the marketplace at the moment, there are great people available. We're in a kind of unique position. So there's been 2 years of layoffs, pauses, restructures. People who wouldn't normally be on the market, who've delivered well, who've adapted fast, but who have been unfortunate with the organizations that they've worked with, are available. And if you are able to position yourself strategically, it's the best time in years to hire people. Now, you have to hire people that are going to execute for you today. We've talked about being leaner, but the window won't stay open. Whereas 6 months ago, all we were seeing was news about people losing their jobs and people being made redundant and people being let go. That's still happening, but we're starting to see more and more people announcing new positions, move into new roles, join new companies. That window is starting to shift. There's still a lot of supply, a lot of talent in the market, but that window is absolutely starting to shift. So if you have the opportunity to do so, if you were planning to hire in 3 months' time or in 6 months' time, it's worth considering whether you can do that earlier in a time in the market where you can perhaps access some talent that wouldn't otherwise have been available. But volume doesn't equal quality. We still have to look for the right people. Even for those people who have positions open, we're seeing all the time that they have 300 applicants in a week, or that they're getting a ton of CVs through the door. And if each of those candidates, if there's enough people in that group that are of the right ilk, the right people that you need, then that's fantastic. But don't expect that to be the case. if people haven't been affected by the changes in the industry, then they're probably quite cautious. The best people, if they're in a role, if they haven't been put into the market, are actually staying put. We're seeing that in greater numbers than we've ever seen before. They've seen that their friends, their colleagues have been looking for work for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and they don't want to be in that position. So even if they're not 100% happy where they are, if they feel it's secure, you're going to have to be proactive to attract them. So, figure out why they should come and join you from their point of view. What does the opportunity look like? How can you provide them that pathway, that stability? Because those are the things that they're really looking for. And you're going to have to go to them. They're not going to come to you. People who are somewhat active are not going to apply. They're going to sit in their roles until they find something better. Well, not even, and they're not even looking for something better. So they're going to sit where they are until they feel the time is right. And if you rely on what comes to you, then you're not in control of the quality of the candidates that you hire. You will pick the best person out of the people who've applied to you. You won't necessarily pick the person who's at the level that you need if you haven't got that quality of candidates. So just be aware of that. If you do need something specific, or you do want someone who's absolutely top caliber, they may be in the market, but if they're not, you're going to have to go to them, and you're going to have to work pretty hard to get them, because of all these things. I've just talked about all of this. So we have to make sure that we're showing them security, we're showing them meaning, we're showing them potential. If you can't speak to those clearly, it's going to be very, very difficult to attract people. So make sure your proposition to a candidate resonates from their point of view. But don't just hire people for the sake of it. We've seen overhiring, right? We've seen companies having to reposition because they've hired too many people. Make sure that you're hiring for the right reasons. Maybe bring the timelines up, but plan ahead for what you're going to need, because if you know you're going to need a new VP of regulatory, for example, as you move into the next phase of your growth, there's probably some brilliant people in the market right now. But if you're not sure, you shouldn't take that plunge, because who knows when the market is going to turn, when things are going to become more straightforward. Plan ahead. Continue to look for people who both perform well, who bring high performance to your company, and who align with your culture. But if there are key appointments on your pathway, then think about bringing them forward. So the right people are out there, and it's a great position for companies that can hire right now. But you've got to know how to approach it in the right way. They're available, but they're cautious. They are not necessarily in the market. So you've got to target them and be proactive about them. If you are in a position to hire, then you should do so in a way that's got intent and deliberateness. Then go after the people that you want aggressively and relentlessly. And yeah, the companies are in a position to do so. Those who are able to use this window of opportunity to upgrade their teams, or to bring in the people they're going to need down the line, are doing so. I'm going to get into the Q&A in just a second, but if you are in that position, if you are looking to build your team over the next 6 months, or over the next few months, then we've put together a free personalized talent insight session just for people who are in this session. So no obligation, no charge, but if you tell us what you're looking at in the second half of the year, we're going to go and get you specific data around the size of the available market, where candidates are based and what companies they're working for, what compensation data you should be bearing in mind, specifically tailored to the positions that you're looking to hire. We'll also review your candidate attraction propositions and make sure you're positioning yourself properly for the people who are in today's market. If you'd like to do that, take about half an hour. If you'd like to do that, put talent into the chat, and one of the team will get in touch and we'll get that booked in for you today. So let's pull everything together that we've talked about. So momentum is returning very, very slowly, but we are starting to turn the corner. I think we have hit the bottom of the market, and while we are still very close to it, I think we're starting to move in the right direction. We need to build better companies around the science that we're developing. There's still such incredible things happening in this sector. We just need to find ways to bring it to patients. Look at your business model. Look at the way you're running your business. Are you conducting experiments with your business? Are you conducting experiments with your operations? Are you using technology? Are you automating things that no longer need to be done by hand so that your people can focus on more high value activities? All those things that, in the old world, you would have said, I'd like to do that if we had the capacity. Well, now you can use technology to get that capacity. And if your teams are going to be smaller, then your hiring needs to be sharper. So make sure that you're focused on bringing in the right people to your business, not just those who are technically competent, but those who align with your mission, your values, your company's culture. Try and focus on those three things that companies in the future will do. Try and focus on building a big picture for people to rally around, on creating an environment of learning and development, and of creating connections for people, especially with those who they wouldn't normally connect with. And as I say, if you're able to, it's a great time to hire people and to build a very, very strong team. Keep the hope, keep the faith alive. We are in difficult times, as I said at the beginning. However, we're starting to see the light, the green shoots popping up, and I know it doesn't feel like that all the time. I know it still feels like a grind, and I get it. It's like that for us as well. However, we are moving in the right direction. Don't be patient and wait for things to change, though. Change the way that you're looking at your business to fit the market that we're in today, and don't expect the pace of change to slow down. It's probably not going to. So that's it from me. Happy to take questions. Please do either put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A panel. Or come off mute and ask, or if you pop your hand up, we'll take you off mute. Happy to answer any questions on any of that or anything else that you'd like to ask about. Michael, did you have a question? Let me take you off mute. Yeah, now you can take yourself off mute.
I have too many things keeping me on mute.
There you go. There you are.
There we go. We're on. Great talk. Absolutely fantastic. So many insights. Really enjoyed it. Couple of things then. So from a recruitment point of view, do you think you'll move into doing physical and digital workers as like more agentic AI as a path forward in your position?
Well, so in our company, I'm not 100% sure what our approach is going to be to that. I think we've applied some of these technologies in another project that has spun out of our business. But digital workforce is certainly a topic that we're looking at quite heavily. I was at a Salesforce conference last week or week before, where they were talking about Agentforce, which is their digital workforce platform. And it's incredible some of the stuff that can be done now. But but certainly in the way that we're hiring for our team, or the way that I'm looking at how our business develops internally, then the first thing I'm looking at is there technology that can look after what I need to be done. And then if there's not, then we'll look at, do we need to bring in people to do that, and how many people do we need? That number's becoming smaller and smaller. So what our role in helping people to adapt to a digital workforce is going to be, I haven't quite decided yet, but it is something that we're looking at. But yeah, certainly we are looking at supplementing our human workforce with a digital workforce for sure.
I think from the human side, I was at a AI think tank a couple of weeks back, and there was a recruitment guy there, and he was saying how actually being a recruiter is more important than ever, because trying to find the right person is difficult because AI has broken that traditional process. So he gave the example of LinkedIn. You open a LinkedIn post and there's 1,000, 10,000 people apply within 4 days, all with a perfect cover letter, a perfect CV for that job you've written. Therefore, what you've got is thousands of noise to sort through, and they all look the same.
Yeah,
so actually 100%. For him, like LinkedIn's broken. So he was saying, like, for him, it's the best time ever to be in recruitment, because to your point, trying to find those perfect people now is actually, because of AI, more difficult than ever.
Completely agree. And I think it used to be, when the talent in the market was tighter, that we used to sort of position ourselves as, look, we can find you better people than you can find yourself.
Yeah.
I still think a lot of the time that's true, but actually the biggest selling point that we talk to clients about is that we're going to save you a huge amount of time in filtering through all these hundreds, thousands of applications that you've got to get to the right 5 or 6. Because, I mean, do you have time to even look at 500 CVs, you know,
No,
in any sort of
no.
detail. But as you say as well, they all kind of look the same, and they've all been tweaked and refined and polished, and
They're all perfect.
yeah,
Like they're all
yeah,
99.9% spot on because they've taken your advert, their CV, and got, "Ooh," even if
yeah,
it's not there, AI will create it and make it look great. So
yeah.
yeah, so more than ever, it's key to get to your point, find the right people. But you're not going to do that through recruitment anymore. You need agency people. You need headhunters.
I think so. There's an argument to say that it's going to be more value in making typos and stuff like that than there's ever been before, right?
Yeah. Okay. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Cheers, Michael. Any other questions, thoughts? Kate, oh, Kate has just put in there, if you do want to take advantage of this report that we're putting together with, you know, specific data about the things that you're looking at, then please do put a comment in the chat. Anything else I can answer for people? Any other points that you'd like to raise or questions that you have? You can raise your hand, pop it in the Q&A, pop it in the chat, whatever works well. Just watching for those little dots to start going. All right, well, I will still keep an eye on this, but if there are any other questions and we do wrap up before you have a chance, or if something sparks after this, then drop us a line. You should have our contact details. I'm sure you all know somebody here. We'll be in touch in follow-up as well. Thank you for joining us. Keep going, keep your head up, keep grinding away. We are in a difficult point, but it's starting to turn, and there are some really exciting trends if you position yourself well against them. Best of luck. Thank you very much.